Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Corey Jason, joined alongside with Ben Mandel and John Pauline. Guys, let's get this rocking with one of the greatest first series any rookie has ever had. Right? We got to start off hot. Blue Jays Davis Schneider, the second baseman, the 28 overall prospect in the MLB pipeline. He came up in this weekend series against the Red Sox and he just went off. He's the first player in MLB history to have 9 hits, 2 home runs in those 9 hits as well. They're his first 3 career games, and he was just insane, especially when the Blue Jays really needed him after getting embarrassed by the Orioles in the series prior to that. The Blue Jays, a team that started off pretty hot after the All-Star break and then kind of faltered. The Yankees and Red Sox not really nipping at them, but just they needed to win some games. And on top of that, they knocked the Red Sox down a bit, knocked the Red Sox back into last place. Just an incredible start to a career for Schneider. But, there's always two sides to every coin. And Reds rookie pitcher Lyon Richardson happened to get the exact opposite type of debut, right? In his first 2 career pitches, not batters, but pitches, went back-to-back home runs. And he's also the first to ever do that since that stuff was tracked, which goes back to 1999 for this stat, but I'd assume we would know about it if it happened before then too. So not just the
Yeah,
two batters, but the
you
first 2 pitches he ever threw went to back-to-back home runs. So at the same time, we saw like the height of rookie achievement. We just saw the embarrassment and a very big welcome to the show moment for these guys.
well, think about how rare it is to give up 2 home runs on the first 2 pitches of a game, right? Usually the leadoff hitter is going to take a strike. Like you're settling in. You have to throw 2 absolute meatballs for those 2 guys to be swinging away first pitch and crushing it out of the yard. So I was going to stream, Ryan Richardson for fantasy this week and on Sunday, just because I thought, oh, rookie pitcher, Washington. I decided not to because Washington has been burning me fantasy wise. Whether I pick a Washington player or go against Washington as a team, I can't get a read on that. And Ryan Richardson clearly couldn't too.
Do you think he still tries to get the ball from his first pitch, even though it was a home run?
That's a good question. I think he probably does, but it's not one of those like we'll give you anything for the ball. If you want to be nice and give it back, great. But if you want to keep it, let's pretend my first pitch was next start.
Someone might just throw a ball on purpose so that way that first pitch and that first ball that they have doesn't have a bad memory to it.
Yeah, you're right. I think the only thing worse than giving up 2 home runs in your first 2 pitches is your first pitch you get a comebacker off the dome. I feel like that would be like the absolute worst thing that could happen to you. So
Yeah, especially if it's career ending. Don't
I
wish
mean,
that upon anybody.
the closest we saw to something like that was I don't know if you guys remember Adam Greenberg with the Marlins about a decade ago, 2013. He came back after in his first career at bat. He got knocked in the head with a pitch, and he was out for like a couple of years, I want to say, before he's able to build it up and get back. And he had like a week, 10 game long stint back with the Marlins. Walked in his first at bat back. Just really nice story, but these scary things do happen to players, and it sucks if it happens in your first career at bat or your first career pitch, but it does happen sadly. So hopefully Lyon Richardson bounces back, and hopefully for my Yankees' sake at least, Davis Schneider comes back down to earth and the Blue Jays start to fall off a bit more. But speaking of the Yankees, their big free agent signing in the offseason that didn't come from their own team, Carlos Rodon, is on the 15-day IL again, now with a little hammy issue. The Yankees this season have had a penchant for having players play through injury. We see that with LeMahieu. Judge is doing that right now. We know Nestor Cortez was pitching through the most of the season until he went down back in May with an injury he was pitching through since February. Jose Trevino, who went down about 2 weeks ago, out for the year, he was playing with an injury through spring training, and they thought they can just manage it. I'm hoping that's the case with Rodon, where he had this lingering issue all year, and he tried to pitch through it because, man, did he suck. He literally, in his Yankee career, he's had one good start, just one. And even then, he didn't look great against the Mets, but he's just had one at least half decent start. And after that, an ERA over 7 after 6 starts is not where you want to be at.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, right? And I wonder if this is a move that the Yankees make just to try and maybe push Rodon and give him a bit of a break to try and reset, because that's what this seems like. It doesn't really, it seems like they just said, hamstring, injured list. Here you go,
No.
15
He
days
did
to
leave
get
his
right.
last start early. He left his start on Sunday after 2 innings with the
Yeah,
hamstring issue. Like, you can visibly see him hurt. Like, they came out and got him from the mound.
it's still, to me, it just feels like the Yankees and Rodon reached a point where they knew he needed some time off, whether it was because of the injury or not. I'm not saying he's not hurt. I'm saying it just felt like, the Yankees know that they need to fix something, because whether
Yeah.
he's healthy,
He had all of April, May, June, and a good few weeks in July off.
Well, exactly, and that's why. Well, and it's not like he's taxed at this point, but that's why I wonder. This isn't what he was dealing with before. Was this really something that's been nagging him, the whole season, or did Rodon kind of just come back? Wasn't what the Yankees expected, and now they're like, okay, we're gonna reset right now, because whether Rodon's pitching poorly or not pitching, the Yankees are falling in the standings, so they need to figure something out.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation to look out for. He also, though, isn't a guaranteed loss on the mound. Luis Severino is. So that's somebody else to look out for. He's got the highest ERA out of all qualified pitchers this season. I think it's approaching 8 at this point. It just seems like he's good to get tagged for 7 runs every start. So we'll see if he pitches on Wednesday. But, there was a time when Severino was considered, at least by some Yankee fans, not by me, but some, to be kind of the 1A, the 1B to DeGrom's 1A of New York Aces, just to be in that stratosphere. And we've seen how that's shaken out. But, John, I want to get your thoughts on this. Somebody who's also really struggled this season is Trey Turner, Philly's big free agent signing. He's been pretty terrible. Fans were booing him, and then all of a sudden, they gave him a standing O to kind of cheer his head. This is a very uncharacteristic Philly move. I just can't believe it's coming out of that city. So how do you feel about giving Trey Turner a standing ovation when he hasn't done anything to earn it?
I'm kind of perplexed as to Phillies fans doing this, because in the past, they're seen more as a tougher fan base. I mean, you had Eagles fans in Philly, throwing snowballs at Santa, and they were and then I think my dad
Don't
said something
forget
about
the
their
batteries that JD drew.
yeah, and I think they were booing kids in an Easter egg hunt because they couldn't find eggs. Like, this is a really tough, fan base, very passionate fan base.
Ask Carson Wentz.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, I guess, Trainer's been struggling, and I guess, somehow, I don't even know how it got started, but they gave him the standing ovation, and it seemed to work. I mean, that after the standing ovation, I mean, he went 4 for 12. He hit a home run. He had 2 doubles. Even helped the Phillies win against the Royals. So I mean, maybe he's back now. Maybe all he needed was some love from,
It's also the Royals, though.
They're still an MLB
what it is.
baseball
The
team.
Royals.
They're still an MLB baseball team.
Swept the Mets.
Are the Mets an MLB baseball team at that point?
Yeah,
like
Mets are an MLB baseball
Look at
team.
their roster. They traded all those pieces. That starting lineup is still an MLB starting lineup. Which, by the way, Brett Beatty optioned to AAA today. If you
Really?
didn't see,
saw
so I mean, I guess they're going to let Vientos rock at third. Beatty's only hitting 212 this year. He's barely above the Mendoza line.
Give me
So
Mauricio or give me death.
Mauricio's not touching the MLB field this season. He's not ready.
Let him be ready at some point. Let him get his feet wet.
Let him make the team out of spring training next year.
But we're getting away from this. So Trey Turner got that standing O. Very weird situation. But an even weirder situation. I don't know if you guys saw this about the Orioles broadcaster, Kevin Brown. He got suspended by the team because these are the stats he read out on air. There was a graphic before the game that he was talking about. The Orioles were playing the Rays, and he was talking about the Orioles' struggles, right? So the TV producers put out a graphic, and he was reading these. Last 16 series against the Rays, the Orioles are 0-15-1. 15 straight series losses before this season, right? Their last series win was June 23rd to 25th, 2017. This season, the Orioles have 3 wins in 5 games. Between 2020 and 2022, they had 3 total wins in 21 games against the Rays. Those are facts. Nothing, any way you cut it. Those are the truth, the cold hard truth. And he was suspended for those comments because I guess somebody in the brass didn't like it. I don't know. What do you guys think of that? Should they rescind the suspension and almost apologize to everybody for being as soft as that is? Because people are kind of viewing the Orioles as America's team, modeled after last year's Mariners, kind of that underdog team that everybody kind of feels good to root for. But then you go and do something like this, and I feel like you lose all goodwill you've built up and kind of become like an enemy that people don't like because you do something stupid like this.
Yeah, this isn't going to stop me from rooting for the guys on the field. This isn't going to stop me from liking this Orioles team, and it's not going to lessen my hate for the Yankees. So it doesn't matter, right?
What does it have to do with the Yankees?
Well, it's a joke, right? I mean, but at the end of the day, I don't think this is going to make the Orioles lose any fans, but it is definitely something that's going to make you scratch your head and think, what? As a broadcaster, it's never going to be a situation where we hide the truth or try to make one team look better than another. I don't care if I work for this team. I am never going to leave stats and facts out of the broadcast because my job isn't to make the Orioles look good. My job is to inform the fans and the viewers of what exactly is taking place.
Now, Ben, you were a broadcaster. Now, do you feel like you've ever said anything, even a little funny, that once you said it, you're kind of like, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that, and nobody ever made a comment about it again, something that you kind of, even knowing as you were saying, probably shouldn't have said? Because this guy said something that he probably never thought twice about.
Well, no, I've never had a moment where I felt like I said something I shouldn't have. But I mean, there was a moment when I was at school and there was 2 moments, one involving me and one involving one of the guys doing radio with me, not 2 different occasions. I had mentioned a player being out of a game. Didn't disclose the reason or anything. I just said that the player had personal matters going on. The school said to me, I'm not allowed to acknowledge when a player is out of the game. You get out of here. If the star player is not in, I'm going to say something. So I did have something like that happen to me, and I did say that to them. I'm like, that's just not going to happen. And they're like, well, then you're not going to be able to do our games. And I said, okay. And they quickly backed down. But I remember one of my guys working with me, he was talking about how much better one of the other players is than another. And the one girl's parents were watching and apparently had a very unhappy call to the school. But anyway, though, back to the point, when you see something like this with a broadcaster, you feel for him. You do feel for him, but it's not going to keep me from rooting for the Orioles.
Just a weird move by, like, I guess I would say probably higher up. I don't know if their front office probably higher than that. I'd say probably maybe from ownership banning them, because I mean, if anything, it seems like a testament to how far the Orioles have come for how good they've been this year. Like, it's just kind of showing like where they were and where they were now. I don't know why anyone would get upset about that. And even to ban like the broadcaster, like, was it even his idea to bring it up, talk about it, or was it like the producers? Like it seems like they're maybe just shooting the messenger here for like no reason. But I mean, it's not the team itself. I mean, you're still gonna root for the players, still gonna root for the team. This seems like a management thing. So I mean, you can still hate the management of the team and still root for like the players. But just a weird move.
Now, I got a question for you guys. What's the first rule of Fight Club?
Don't talk
Nobody
about
talks
Fight
about
Club.
Fight Club.
Wrong. It's fight Tim Anderson. That is the first and most important rule. Fight Tim Anderson. So, White Sox, Guardians, right? They got into a bit of a scrap, a little, a little tussle going on around second base. So let me set the scene. Jose Ramirez, J-Ram at the plate, knocks in a RBI double, slides head first on the second base. Tim Anderson starts straddling him a little, holding him down a little bit, getting in his way.
A little
J-Ram gets
risque.
up. J-Ram gets up. Tim Anderson and him, they start jawing a little bit, right? Tim Anderson then, says, let's do this. He squares up. He's ready to go. J-Ram says, all right, you're not going to disrespect me like that. You got to defend yourself. J-Ram gets in the middle. J-Ram starts to get back at him, right? Michael Kopech comes, grabs J-Ram from behind. Jose Ramirez now, he's locked up, and Tim Anderson's still there with his hands up, slap fighting him almost, looking really weak, to be honest with you. You're not being held back, and you're not getting any shots in. And then as J-Ram's getting held back, he throws a nice right hook in there and just knocks the daylights out of Tim Anderson. Just a sight to see, right? Incredible.
It was nuts, right? And I hate to say that this is the most exciting thing that's happened this baseball season.
Down goes Anderson.
Like, the one thing I want to say, you know how in football Odell Beckham gets that reputation of being a troublemaker and a locker room cancer?
Love Odell.
Love Odell too. I don't believe that about Odell. If there's anybody in any sport who deserves that reputation, it is Tim Anderson. The stories that are coming out are almost comical. And
let's put a pin in that, because I want to talk more about those stories, especially the White Sox locker room. But so 6 people were suspended from this fight. Tim Anderson got 6 games. Ramirez got 3. Emmanuel Clase got 1. Now, the manager from the White Sox, Pedro Griffo, my bad, and Tito Francona from the Guardians, they got 1. And also Cleveland's third base coach, Mike Sarbaugh, he got a game. The coaches and managers, they aren't really allowed to appeal, so they're serving it. Sarbaugh has to serve his a day after Francona's because you can't be down 2 coaches. And then Anderson and Ramirez, they both appealed. Usually when a player appeals their suspension, it does get cut down by a couple games. So I would assume Tim Anderson ends up at 3 games and J-Ram gets 1. So the Yankees are playing the Orioles, the White Sox, the early part of this week. Anderson should be serving his suspension, but instead he's on the roster. So we'll see how that affects it. But that White Sox locker room is a mess. And before we go into what, newly acquired Yankee reliever Kenyon Middleton had to say, I do want to hear your thoughts on if there should be fighting in baseball, if they should allow it, kind of like in hockey, or if there's just no place in the sport for it. Because I know how I feel, and I'll touch on that after you guys. But should they be allowed to fight? Should there be an avenue for players to square up and throw down? Well, how do you guys feel about it?
I don't know. I mean, it seems it's just weird seeing. It's like fun to watch them fight, but it just doesn't seem like it really fits the sport. Like, it seems like it fits hockey way more than it does baseball, because like hockey's a way more physical sport than baseball, and you have the penalty box and stuff, and there's not really an equivalent for baseball. I mean, I guess you could throw them out of the game, but but then they can't come back in. So it's like, why would you fight? Want to fight, and then you're done with, for the whole game. Then it's fun to watch, but I'm not really sure if it really has a spot in baseball just for the type of game it is. I mean, it's fun to see here and there, but I don't think I want it to be like a regular thing.
Yeah, there's definitely no room in baseball for this. It's one of those things that shouldn't happen. And, yeah, I feel like Tim Anderson kind of had this coming. And I think it's really comical when you get knocked out and you're the one who has to serve the longest
Because he
suspension.
lost the fight.
So
Not to mention his Twitter account just popping off on like wide
Oh,
receiver
yeah.
type cryptic stuff.
Well,
Yeah, he's
yeah,
taking the
saying like
Antonio
they're gonna
Brown
go,
route.
yeah, they're gonna catch up. But anyway, it is comical in that sense. But really, there's no room for fighting in baseball. This isn't what the sport is about. Could you imagine if a guy like Aaron Judge just decided to fight Jose Altuve on second base in that
Don't
picture?
tempt me with a good time, Ben.
Exactly. Yankee fans would love to see it, but could you imagine the carnage that would come from that?
So hear me out. I think you should be able to fight as long as it takes place on the grass in the infield. Anybody can square up at any point. No weapons, but you only get a couple shots in before it has to get broken up due to safety.
Rock'em
slugfest.
sock'em robots in the middle of baseball.
Maybe each team should be able to have those little bop 'em blow up balloon hands, or maybe those like Q-tip
Hulk
type
hands.
things. The Q-tip type things, they are the red or blue, and you hold them in the middle, and you just almost fight them like a bow staff, almost something like that. Tell me that wouldn't make baseball more fun. We're talking about changing rules all season, right? Adding in a pitch clock, right? Why not actually change the game for the better and add something fun like fights?
Well, maybe because I don't want my best players to end up with broken orbital bones.
That's why you have the soft gloves. Tell me Joe Kelly getting into a fight every relief outing wouldn't be the most fun thing.
No room in the sport for it. It's not that kind of game. It's
More
not
than
like
enough
hockey
room.
where you're running into each other and killing each other.
If you're throwing 99 at my head, I feel like I have the right to give you a hook.
I think Corey wants us to be like Slugfest, like an MLB Slugfest for
I
PlayStation
loved
2.
MLB Slugfest. I would just button mash whenever whoever it was would go to fight Roger Clemens on the mound. I was Clemens throwing at everybody, but my pitcher or my batter, whoever I was, always walked away the winner. I remember playing that game the most with an old friend of mine, Zach Marzano, when we were kids, and we would just do everything in our power to start a fight every time. You're standing on first base and you're just punching the first baseman to knock the ball loose so you can move to the next bag. Really fun game. It's a real big shame they only made like 2 or 3 of them. But got to move on to the toxic clubhouse that is the White Sox. Now, the Yankees acquired Kenyon Middleton as their big trade deadline acquisition because God only knows they needed a reliever to really make them a playoff club. And
Didn't they trade a reliever too?
no,
I don't know why I'm thinking they got rid of one.
nobody worthwhile. But so he didn't want to shave his beard, but he said that as soon as he got the call, he ran to shave it because he knew how the Yankees played. He knew how they were. And he goes, you know what? I as much as I loved my beard, I wanted to win. And that's how they do things there. I don't care that I shaved. I wanted to win because when you were in the White Sox, guys were missing, meetings. They were missing PFPs, pitcher fielding practices. Just they were showing up late to meetings or just not showing up. They were doing all these different things. And you know what? Sleeping in the bullpen, no repercussions, nothing. Like, how do you, as a general manager, a manager, a coach, or a veteran player, how do you see this? Especially Tim Anderson, who is the vocal leader, the face of that franchise. How do you see this and not do something about it? Because this not only is a knock on you as an organization, but every single player in that clubhouse should be looked at a little less because of these stories. Another one, Yasmani Grandal, the catcher for the White Sox, right? He wasn't in the lineup the day before the All-Star break, so he wanted to leave, a little early. He wasn't playing. He wanted to get started on his vacation, to rest up and relax. Not saying that's right or wrong. It's wrong. But he the word got around the locker room. Tim Anderson heard it. Tim Anderson, lying down in the bathtub. And I want to picture this as more like the ice tub instead of just, him in a bubble bath, because, makes him look a little better, having his rubber ducky with him, or, just tubs of ice. And Anderson said, F him. If he wants to leave, I'll pay for his ticket. Something fired up. That's what a leader does, right? Well, Grandal walked across the locker room and slapped him across the face. Grandal has refuted this story, but players can refute it all they want. I feel like this actually happened. It sounds very possible, but like Tim Anderson now has two people hitting him in the head, coming out about him in the last couple of days. How do you look at yourself and think that I'm a leader when people are saying this stuff and your locker rooms run this way? So like, how does a locker room get this bad and this toxic? And how does somebody who was, just 2 years ago thought to be one of the brightest young shortstops in the game, one of the future leaders, kind of have this fall from grace?
There are a lot of sources that are also backing these reports in the Middleton story as well as the Grandal story. So it's not like these things are just coming out. Now, not as many for Grandal, but Middleton, in that story, I did read that apparently there were multiple sources that backed Middleton's accounts. So it's not like these are just stories. It's not like people are just trying to sabotage Jerry Reinsdorf's Bulls. No, the White Sox are a toxic organization at this point. They need to blow it up. Nobody, and I mean nobody, should have a job there after this year unless you're named Dylan Cease.
Now, where did we hear this before, that the White Sox were a garbage organization? I wonder if there was somebody who could have warned us about this, said they hated the roster construction, the front office, and just everything about this roster and this team, how they just weren't fit to play together. I just feel like somebody should have said something, in March when talking about these teams, about how dysfunctional the White Sox were. If only somebody knew ball enough to pick up on that before the season. If only
Okay,
somebody was like
Corey.
that.
Hey, a broken clock is right twice a day. So
But moving away from this, let's get into some studs and duds, because I really want to talk some Heen Dog. Rangers starting pitcher, former Yankees stud, Andrew Heaney, 11 and 2/3 innings. He's gone 2-0, 6 hits, 2 walks, an astounding 15 strikeouts. Just a great showing from Heaney, especially with Eovaldi down. Scherzer not living up to it in his first start. The Rangers need somebody, and you know what? They might have gotten it with him. Then on the flip side, Ben Lively, Cincinnati starting pitcher, on the IL now due to an injury. Maybe this is one of those phantom ones. 4 innings, a loss, right? 13 hits, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, 13 earned runs. Again, 4 innings, 13 earned runs. An incredibly horrible outing for a team that, was at one point fighting for their division, and I don't believe has won a game since the trade deadline.
yeah, absolutely brutal for Cincinnati. It really has just been a tough stretch when we really felt like they were going to pull away with the division. Milwaukee's right back in it. Chicago's on a run. Pittsburgh's still kind of hanging around. They've had some guys show up. So, really disappointing for Cincinnati, but definitely more on them later. So my stud, I'm going George Kirby. Now, he had 2 starts this past week, and the first one, maybe not so great. He went 5 innings. He didn't get a decision. He didn't factor in, but he only allowed 4 hits. He allowed 1 run, 2 walks, and 7 strikeouts. Pretty good outing. Well, then he turned around in Los Angeles, went 7 innings to pick up the win, allowing just 3 hits, 1 earned run, struck out 5, 0 walks. That's good enough for a quality start. That's a fantastic outing for George Kirby. And now my dud, I'm going over to Los Angeles Dodgers starting pitcher Bobby Miller. And while Kirby had a pretty good week, Bobby Miller has just been struggling big time as of late, to the point where he might not have his spot in the rotation anymore. This guy has been absolutely brutal as of late. And in his most recent start this past week, couldn't even get out of the fourth inning, just 3 2/3 innings, gave up 6 hits, only 1 earned run, but 3 strikeouts, 1 walk, really, really struggled. Couldn't get himself out of trouble, gave up a bunch of runs on top of the only 1 earned run he allowed. Just a tough outing for him. And really, it's been a tough few outings since the All-Star break and really since the calendar turned to July.
My stud this week is someone who's probably be the front runner for National League MVP if it wasn't for Acuna. It's Freddie Freeman. He had 13 hits, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, batted .481, has absolutely just been tearing it up all week. I think even today, I think he got walked twice, 1 intentional walk. Like they're not even gonna pitch to this guy anymore. Just so good. And my stud this week is a guy who's freshly traded at the deadline. Former Seattle Mariner, now Arizona Diamondback, Paul Sewald. He pitched twice last week. First, he came in a game where Arizona was losing big, struck out 3 guys, no problem. But then he came in for a save, his first save as an Arizona Diamondback, and he blew the save, got the loss, gave up 2 hits, 3 earned runs, and a walk. So it's just not a good start for him in Arizona.
Yeah, rough outing there for Seawald. But Ben, you were kind of alluding to it earlier, and I want to touch more on that. The NL Central race is really shaped up to be probably the tightest all-around race in all of baseball. You got Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Chicago, Milwaukee all fighting. That's 4 out of the 5 teams fighting for first place. Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, they were first half darlings. Pittsburgh was the first one. They started off hot. They've kind of faltered since May. Cincinnati, then, June, July, they were the hot team, and they've kind of fallen. Now Chicago's the hot team. They, everybody thought they were going to be sellers at the deadline. Stroman, Bellinger, all going to be gone. They decided to buy instead, and they're the darling. Milwaukee's always been, that second fiddle, always, staying right there underneath the water, ready to snap up and take first place. They're still in that fight. So, what's your thoughts on this race, and who do you think ends up taking it? Because this is really a fun race to watch from a division that everybody thought was pretty garbage at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and to see that not only are we seeing the NL Central not be garbage and, see an actual race coming out of this, you're seeing some of these teams in the wild card race too. These teams are rolling right now. They are crumbling. Right now we are seeing the Cubs absolutely roll. We're seeing we're seeing the Pirates hang around. We're seeing the Brewers take advantage of their opportunities. We're seeing, the Reds, they're falling a bit, but they've been playing well as of late as, after O'Neill or after, Ellie De La Cruz came up. The Reds, they still have that energy. I'm not counting them out just yet either. This is a fun race, and I really think that this is a team that can. These are 4 teams that maybe they can win a 3-game playoff series. Who knows?
I personally think the NL Central is almost up for grabs for almost any of these teams. You have the Brewers in first, Cubs are a game and a half out. Reds are a game and a half out. The Pirates are 9 games out. The Cardinals are 10 out. So it's like almost anyone's games, and I honestly think the Reds might take it because you're gonna have Hunter Green coming back in the middle of August.
Big Hunter Green guy.
And honestly, and it's just really close, and and all of them are in like contention for the wild card.
Yeah.
So the Cubs I think are already in it, and the Reds are I think like tied for third almost.
Now, John, let me ask you another question. Just kind of expanding this to the rest of the sport. In your top 10, you had the Twins. Why is that? And then, give me the State of the Union with the Phillies. Out of all our teams, you're the only ones really in a race. So how's that going with the Phillies and the Twins?
Twins, I had them out last week, I think, but I think we had them ranked. I have them 8 now. They're first in the AL Central now. They swept Arizona this past week. They won a series against the Cardinals. They're playing good ball and stuff, and I didn't really think there were much other teams that I wanted to put ahead of them. So, I put them in there. I mean, maybe you could argue you want to put the Phillies in the ranking, but I refuse to put them there because every time I do, I swear they slide off a cliff and they'll go on a losing streak. So I don't want to do that. But I mean, Phillies lately, I mean, they've been going good. I mean, I don't think they have a really good shot on winning the NL East here, unless the Braves like miraculously like just implode on themselves and just start losing everything. But I mean, Phillies are looking good right now. It seems like they got it figured out. I mean, you just had Marsh go down with a knee injury, so that's gonna hurt because they're really hurting the outfield defensive wise. But I mean, if Trey Turner can start hitting again and everything, and Harper gets the power back for home runs, I mean,
Right.
they're pretty much a lock, I think, for like a top wild card spot.
Now, Ben, for you, I kind of want to hear your thoughts on Seattle being in your top 10 because they were always a team that everybody thought was going to be good, and they've kind of started off kind of poorly, and they bounced back now. That, and also, can you envision Baltimore overtaking Atlanta as the top team in the league, and especially in the rankings?
Yeah, so I'll start with Seattle. I think that 8-2 in their last 10 when we put those out. And when you look at Seattle, this is a team that's clicking. Everything's coming together. You talk about the Angels as contenders. Well, Seattle, this is a team that we thought could do it at the beginning. The Angels were a team we were questioning. I think that Seattle can be a playoff team. I think that there's a wild card up for grabs, and I think Seattle is storming to take it. And now, when it comes to Baltimore and Atlanta, I think Baltimore can take it, and I think Baltimore is dealing with a tougher team behind them, multiple tougher teams behind them with Toronto and Tampa Bay. I think, Philadelphia, they're a tough team. You don't want to discount that, but maybe that's why Baltimore doesn't have the win total that Atlanta has. But the way Atlanta is cutting through everybody in the National League, when we were talking about early on in the season that maybe the National League is just better as a whole, top to bottom, that still may be true. But Atlanta, they've just been a hot knife cutting through butter. I don't think there's a team better than them right now.
Now, for our weekly series highlight, I want to highlight Miami at Cincinnati in the early part of the week because those are two teams that, we're in playoff spots. They're still fighting, whether it's for division or wild card in Miami's case, just two teams that really need some wins because they struggled out of the gate in the second half. It's August now, so you got to pile together some more wins. So I'm interested to see how those two teams go up against each other because they're both teams in the wild card standings that are really going to be up against each other. And these head-to-head games are going to be really beneficial for down the line.
Yeah, I'm going with Baltimore and Houston. These are two of the best teams in the American League. Houston's on fire. Baltimore, they currently own the best record in the American League. I am pumped for this series. I cannot wait to see it happen. I think that Baltimore really is going to go out and make a statement. And I think that the Astros are in for a bit of a rude awakening coming into Baltimore because I don't know if they're taking them as seriously as they should.
My weekly highlight this week's gonna be, some division rivalry here. You got the Dodgers facing the Diamondbacks. Dodgers have been really hot lately, and Diamondbacks kind of cooled off a lot. So it'll be interesting to see if the Diamondbacks can, kind of get their hot streak going again against hot Dodgers.
All right, well, that's going to do it here for us at the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Tune into X to hear our tweets. Outsider Sports 3 on the old Twitter wannabe. Outsider Sports Net to hear our rankings. YouTube, TikTok, search up Outsider Sports. But, football's back into it, so keep an eye out for the football pods. Those will be dropping every week now. We're right now previewing a couple teams. So just keep tuning in for that. Have a good one.